Can I say that on the Christian Church Network?
Listen, you said it.
I don't know.
Not me.
I just said it. Sorry. Send your complaints to Rusty George at
Christian Standards coming after you. Hey, welcome to Simple Faith. I am so excited for you to hear from our guest today. He's been a friend for a long time, and we have many similar spheres of influence and circles we've run in. But it's the first time to have him on the podcast. His name is Drew Sherman. He pastors a multi-site church here in the DFW area. He's a great guy with an incredible story of how God basically set him on his path in a very subtle way. And for everybody out there thinking, how do I hear from God? How do I know it's God speaking? You're going to love this. For those of you that are leading churches and you want to know, how do I grow a church and how do I move from a small church, maybe changing a culture into a large kind of multi-site situation, you're going to love this. And for everybody that wonders, how do I keep my devotional time fresh? You're going to love this too. So here is my conversation with Drew Sherman. Drew Sherman, thank you for being on the podcast. I know you're a longtime listener, first-time caller. It is great to have you on the show. For our listeners, give us just the 15-second soundbite as to who you are, and then I want to get into a little bit of your origin story, as we say.
Great. Well, it's great to be here, Rusty. Thanks for having me. Love you guys. Love Crossroads. Love the team. I'm the lead pastor at Compass Church, Dallas, Fort Worth. We are a multi-site church, have 4 campuses, 5 including online. And I've been here for 23 years. Love it. Love DFW. So glad that you're in the area now. Excited.
Well, I know that, having been there 23 years, you didn't start there. You're a little older than 23 or even 40. If you'd started when you were 17. So I want to hear kind of your background, because I know bits and pieces of it, but I think this is really helpful for our listeners to hear kind of how God called you into ministry and even called you to Compass, because you had a few stops along the way while you were determining what was next for you. So give our listeners kind of your story.
For almost half a century, GNPI has been creating media and sharing Jesus. From solar kits to social media, the gospel message has been on the move around the world. Because of people like you, the ministry is now 27 teams strong in 16 countries. And with the inauguration of Nomad Academy, a new generation of media makers receive training to create media and share the good news. In India, Hindi Church Online reaches hundreds of thousands of viewers per week. Projects like The Global Gospel and Amazing Stories connect with children and adults alike in their own heart languages. In fact, GNPI teams engaged over 66 million with the good news last year. But with billions still waiting, we must do more. So, where do we go from here? Mission 15. This movement will send 1 billion gospel invitations by the end of 2030. It's going to take all of us to reach this goal. What can you do? It's easy. Simply pray, share, and give. You can pray for 15 minutes that people around the world will hear the good news. You can share your faith 15 times with others. Invite them to your small group or church. You can give $15 one time or monthly. With every $15 given, 450 gospel invitations will go out. Just imagine the impact you could have over a year when you pray, share, and give. By the power of the Holy Spirit and your partnership, we at GNPI believe this audacious goal is attainable, to send 1 billion invitations to follow Jesus by the end of 2030. Will you join the movement?
Yeah, I grew up in Indiana. In fact, my home preacher was Glenn Liston. I think you know Glenn, and his son Tim Liston. Tim and I were friends in high school, and I grew up in that church. But it's kind of crazy. I mean, I had a job at a drugstore. It's called Hook's Drugstore in high school, and I worked there for 3 years. And I just I noticed that the pharmacist had a nice car. And when you're 16 and, you think of shallow things like that, he's like in this small town in Indiana and he has a Mercedes. And I'm like, I think I could do this, right?
It's counting pills.
Count pills. Yeah, exactly. And then he had a Christmas party and he invited the whole, all the employees, and we went over to his house. He had this big house. He had a pool. And I was like, that's it. I'm going to be a pharmacist. And so that's literally how much thinking I put into my career. And fast forward, it was crazy. I can tell you the day, August 15th, 1984, my dad was taking me up to Purdue University. I had enrolled in pharmacy school and I was on my way there. And there was a rainstorm, one of those Midwest rainstorms. You're from the Midwest, Rusty. You know what that's like. Pounding rain coming on the windshield. And he pulls over because he can't see the road. And my dad looks over at me and he says, so this is what you want to do with your life? And he said, you want to count pills?
Wow.
And I'm like, what? And I said, well, what do you think I should do with my life? And he goes, I don't know. Your mom and I always thought you should go into ministry. And I said, well, have you ever told me that one time? And he looks at me and he says, I'm telling you now. And Rusty, can you believe we turned that car around? We never got to Purdue. And 3 days later, I was in an old 7 a.m. Old Testament history class with Wilbur Fields. I was like, what is happening to me? But I always tell people that's the day that I think my earthly father revealed my heavenly father's will for my life.
Wow.
So,
and that's a big part of it. I mean, God, I don't know. I've never heard an audible voice. I don't know if you have, but God uses other people to get our attention, which is exactly what happened to you.
It's 100% what happened to me. And I'm so thankful and grateful. Dad saw those, I guess, some gift in me. And my wife always says she's really glad I didn't become a pharmacist because I'm a little ADD and I probably would have lost count. So it's probably best. I could save more lives being a pastor.
You'd be the next Dr. Death documentary.
Yeah. It would not have been good. Yeah. This is the best.
Okay. So you go to Ozark, you graduate. And then where was the first stop for you? Was it back in Indiana?
Yeah, it was. For 3 years, I was the youth pastor at Mount Pleasant in Greenwood. And then I was at the North American Christian Convention, and I met Dudley Rutherford. And Dudley, I don't know if some of your listeners, a lot of your listeners know Dudley. Yep. Dudley, awesome, larger than life to me. And I'm 21 years old or 22 years old. And he looks at me and he says, hey, you're going to be my next youth pastor. And I'm like, well, hey, I don't even know who you are. So, but he goes, just come out for the weekend to Los Angeles. And I remember my wife and I, we had just had a baby. We had our first daughter, our daughter, Hannah. And I told her, I said, let's just go to LA for the weekend. I'm not interested in this, but we'll get a free trip to Los Angeles. And I can remember getting on the plane going back from the interview weekend. And she looked at me and she goes, we're coming here, aren't we? And I said, yeah, I think we are. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made. The church was called Hillcrest Christian Church. And many of your listeners, Rusty, know that 3 years after we went there, we merged with Shepherd of the Hills. And of course, the rest is history. And it's one of the reasons Real Life Churches, which is where you got your start, was born.
Absolutely.
And so I loved being a part of that history. I feel so blessed. But I got 10 years into this at Shepherd. I was there 10 years. And I sat Dudley and Tim Winters down. And I said, hey, there's two jobs I want in this church. And I either want your job, Tim, or your job, Dudley. And I'm guessing neither one of those are available. So I'm out. And Dudley's brother-in-law, Reggie Epps, invited me to come back to Mount Pleasant. He was now the pastor there. And he said, be my executive pastor, and I want you to preach 12 to 15 times a year. And he kept his promise. And I preached really honestly about 15 times a year. And I fell in love with preaching, Rusty. And 3 years into that, he went to Kansas City to replace his father. And it became Legacy Christian Church. And Mount Pleasant was looking for a pastor. They made me the interim, and then they hired Chris Philbeck. And as soon as Chris got to Mount Pleasant, I said, hey, I'm out. I want to go preach. and it was better for both of us, I think. And quick story, I wanted to lead a church, and I'm 34 years old, and I'd never done it. I'd only done youth ministry and children's ministry, executive pastor. I'd done everything but, right? And so I called Ken Idleman, and Ken, he's the president of the Bible college that we both attended. At least when I was there, he was the president.
Yep, me too.
And I called Ken and I said, Ken, I just want to preach if you know of any churches that are open. And Ken said 4 words, Rusty, that have become very special to me. And I listened for them, and you hear them often in ministry when God is doing something so cool. He said, it just so happens.
That is so true. That is so
I love
true.
those words. Yeah. I don't know if you ever noticed that, but it just so happens, he said, that I preached at a church today. He was, this is crazy. He was at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport going home. And I had just, I called him, and he said, it just so happens that I preached at a church in Colleyville, Texas today, and they're a hurting church, but they need a leader. And I think you would do well. And he called them that night, and they called me the next day. And 3 months later, I was the lead pastor there. That was April of 2002. And I just finished my 22nd year.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to drill down on that, because you walk into a situation where, I mean, they had been in a bit of a decline. It was a little tough, and you come in having been part of 2 large churches, great organizations, high impact. How do you transition a church? Because in your mind, and I know your personality, it's I want to go from 0 to 100 yesterday, but they're not quite ready for that yet. I mean, since then, we see multi-site, we see a name change, we see all these other things. What was kind of your first few, maybe months or even years to kind of get them to move? And did you even know the destination yet? Because sometimes not all leaders know the destination at the beginning. That kind of, develops along the way.
What's interesting is I had spent some time with Dave Stone right before I went out before I came here. And he told me that he thought it would take 5 years to turn this church around. And I thought, it can happen a lot quicker than that. It took 5 years. And I think I didn't realize they told me they were hurting, but I didn't realize how bad they were hurting. And I even at first took the approach, well, that's not part of my history, but that didn't matter to them because they were still in pain. And so I tell you what I did at the beginning. The first thing I did was I just preached Jesus. My first 10 weeks, I just preached Jesus. And I don't know about you, Rusty, but I've always found when you're not sure what to do, just go with Jesus.
It's always the right answer.
It's always like I've heard Andy Stanley say that a lot. I don't know. I usually go with the guy that, defeated the grave and resurrected. And I always go with that guy. And so I just preached a series on Jesus, and I listened a lot. I listened to the people. And I tried to figure out what their heart condition was. And I'll tell you one thing I've learned. I'll go back and answer your question. But one thing I've learned, if you love your people, they will love you back. If you love your people, this world is full of pastors that use people instead of loving them. And I've always tried to love people instead of using them. And I know that's real simple, but in fact, I do this thing. It's so goofy, but I've had people tell me it's one of the reasons they love our church so much. After every message, every time I always pray at the end of my message, and then I just say I say 3 words. I say, love you guys. And I walk off the stage. And it's incredible. There've been a couple times where I've forgotten to say it, and people will come up to me in the lobby and go, you do love us though, right? Like you still love us. So I know that's simple, but if you love your people, they will love you back. I prayed a lot. One of the prayers that I prayed was that I asked God for a healthy elder team, because I have learned that, a healthy elder team doesn't ensure that you're going to grow, but an unhealthy eldership team almost ensures that you're not. I've definitely learned that. And I inherited a very dysfunctional elder team, a very dysfunctional team. And we had a major culture problem, and we had to spend time changing the culture and moving it toward a positive, healthy culture. Because this, we've heard this, you and I in leadership, culture absolutely eats strategy for breakfast. You can have I had this great plan, but it didn't matter because the people weren't ready for it. And I'm trying to remember the book. We both have a mutual friend, Gene Apple. He wrote that book about change. And he says, he says in the book, leadership is the art of disappointing people at a rate they can stand.
Yeah.
And I thought that is such a powerful quote because it's so true. Man, people don't love change. They resist change. But if we can do it at a rate that they can handle, and I think I kept that in mind, trying to make slow dial turns, that just weren't ready for big dial turns.
Right.
And so we had to work on, they didn't even, it wasn't that they had mission, you've read Peter Greer's book, Mission Drift, probably. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that they had mission drift. There was no mission to drift from. There was nothing there. And so we had to develop our mission, and we had to kind of teach this idea that we have to live and breathe our mission daily.
Right.
And our mission at Compass is navigating people to God. We just say it. We say it all the time. We repeat it all the time. Our mission is navigating people to God. We kind of drafted off of Community Christian Church in Naperville, my friend Dave Ferguson, and his mission was helping people find their way back to God. Mm-hmm. And we kind of drafted off of that. And so we've had that mission for a long time, navigating people to God. It fits with that whole idea of Compass.
Yeah. So obviously before you got there, it had a different name. How long until you changed the name of the church? And was that a difficult thing? Were there people that had kind of assumed that had been in the Bible, so we have to keep it?
I thought that it would be a difficult thing. And what was crazy is nobody cared. They just didn't care. The church was called Highland Meadows Christian Church, and it was based on a neighborhood. Mm-hmm. They bought a portion of the neighborhood to put the church in, and just nobody was really tied to it. And what happened is I'd been there my 5th year. We thought about going multi-site, and the word Highland Meadows just didn't translate anywhere we went. In the places we were planning to do another campus, there were no Highlands and there were no meadows. So we what's funny is I didn't really want the name of the church to be Compass. I asked our staff, hey, we want to do a name change. What do you think we should change the name to? And Bo Chansey, which Bo, who's gone on to lead a great church in New Hampshire, which is like even saying that sentence sounds awkward.
Right. Exactly.
Right. But he leads a church of over 3,500. And but he said, I think we should call it Compass Church. And I am ashamed to tell you this and tell your listeners this, but I looked at him and I said, that's the dumbest name I've ever heard. I'm not calling our church Compass. But what happened, Rusty, was I got on a plane the next day. And the next day I got on a plane and I flew to India. And I met my friend Ajay Law over there, and I was going to speak for this huge youth conference that they do there. There's like 3,000 kids at this conference. It's overwhelming. There's this huge tent, and you go in there, and there's 3,000 kids from India there. Many of them have the dot on their forehead. They've been to Hindu temple that day. Many of them had never heard about Christ, and so great opportunity to preach in front of them. Anyway, I'm sitting on the front row with Ajay that first night of that conference. And I lean over to him and I said, Ajay, do you know what a compass is? And he goes, I can't talk like him, but he says, oh, yes, Brother Drew, everyone knows what the compass is. It's a wayfinding instrument. Everybody in the whole world. And I said, everybody in the whole world knows what a compass is? He goes, oh, yeah, it's universal. And about 8 days later, I got on the plane to go back, and I wrote on a napkin, American Airlines napkin. I still have it. I think it's here in my office somewhere. North, south, east, and west. Engage, serve, worship, navigate. And those became our core values that we adopted 18 years ago. And so I went back in staff meeting, and I said, I think our name's going to be Compass. And Bo's like,
I told you.
So he still tells that story that it was his idea, not mine.
Well,
but that's
of course,
okay.
You got to take credit for that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's been obviously an incredible journey for you guys over the last 23 years. You guys have adopted a unique, I say unique because it's the lesser of the two as far as how many people try this. I don't think it's necessarily the wrong way to do it, but it is a touch unique in the way you do multi-site. And typically multi-site is you're on video at all the other locations, but you do live teaching at all the locations. Can you tell us, first of all, why you chose that approach? And then second of all, how that works? Do you guys write messages together? What's that look like? Did you know that there's more than 6 billion people who do not know Jesus, don't have a relationship with him? 3 billion that don't even know his name, haven't even heard of him. Good News Productions International is working to solve that problem. GNPI has been working for decades now to help use media to help people come to know and find and follow Jesus. You can check out more from gnpi.org, but you can also go and be a part of their bold initiative to share the gospel over 1 billion times in the next few years. Check out mission15.global or go to gnpi.org. I'm going to ask you to sign up through mission15.global and pledge $15 a month. That's like a latte or two in order to help people come to know Jesus globally. The work they do is incredible, and you're going to want to hear all about it on our podcast with Mike Schrage. So check that out and check out GNPI and the work they're doing, mission15.global, and be a part of it today.
Yeah, and I want to stipulate we're not opposed to video. You and I have all kinds of coworkers and friends and partners that use video for multi-site, and it clearly works. So it's not about that. We utilize video sometimes. In fact, in a couple of weeks, I'm doing a message to all the campuses on video. But it's the best model for us. I just feel like that. First of all, I have a concern. It's just my problem. It's not your problem. It's not anybody else's problem. But I have a concern that, Bible colleges are different than they used to be, Rusty, and kids are not necessarily always going to Bible college to become preachers these days. And I think that something changed, something a few years ago. And so we're not getting a ton of recruits from Bible college these days for preaching. And I don't think that's totally true, but I think there's less. And I worry about leadership development. And this was a way for me. I love working with younger leaders, younger pastors. I think in the end, it'll be one of, I'm prayerful that it's one of my best contributions to the kingdom. And what we have seen is the guys that have been teaching in our model, 2 of them are now leading large churches here in America, one in Tucson, Arizona, Trevor DeVage, and then Bo Chansey in New Hampshire. Kevin Weir's out there leading in South Carolina. Kayla Hurst is one of our female communicators. She's leading a church in Massachusetts. Can I say that on the Christian Church Network?
Listen, you said it. I don't know. Not me.
I just said it. Sorry.
Our older viewers will want to write Tim at Tooltime, P.O. Box 32733.
Send your complaints to Rusty George at
Christian Standards coming after you.
Yeah, they are, I'm sure. But the reality is, it's been in some ways, it's been kind of a nice little farm system for them. Because what do they need? They need reps and listen. I think, I think the video model is great, but it doesn't give younger pastors and preachers an opportunity to get reps. I mean, it just doesn't. And they can do it in student ministry, right? And they can do that, but this gives them an opportunity. And we just have some incredible communicators. I mean, listen, we try to hire really, really well, right? You got to be a great communicator to be in our model. You can't, and so, because I mean, we have very large campuses. I mean, 3 of our 4 campuses are pretty large, and so but that's been a lot of hard work for a long time, since 2006. It hasn't always been that way, and we've closed down 2 campuses. So our model at first, I wasn't sure if it was the right way, but I love the team concept. We meet every Tuesday, and yes, we preach the same message at every campus. Now, illustrative content varies based on the personality, the age, the person. If I tell a story about my wife, Nate's not going to tell a story about my wife. He's going to do something else. So, but the red letter content, the outline, scriptures, they're virtually identical. And we meet on Tuesdays, 10 a.m. We usually do about 2 hours together. Some weeks we do write. Some weeks we just talk through. I'll ask them a couple months in advance to put together a template, an outline for a series that we're doing, and they'll come, and then I do edits to them. And we've got a good system. We have good writers. We have great communicators. And like I said, we've got, there's another guy who was in our system, Garrison Paulsgrove. You probably know Garrison, and he's out leading a church in California now. And he wasn't even on our teaching team, but because listen, when you have 4 campuses and you have live teaching 52 weeks out of the year, or really about 50, because we had to do video a couple weeks, think about that. That's 200 weekends where you need a live preacher. Right. So it's not just the teaching pastors. They have second and third voices. You get a lot of people that have, get an opportunity to speak. And so we've had, like I say, about 6 guys move on from our system, and they're out there leading churches. And I love that, because I love being a sending church. Now, the guys I have now, the 4 guys we have now, myself, Luke Davidson, Nate Grella, Josh Wright, all of us have been together at least 7 years. So it's been fun.
That's great rhythm there, and great chemistry you get after that long.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
No, I just think that I think it's a very empowering model, and I'm pouring into them. I'm learning from them. They keep me young. I'm learning what a millennial mind, looks like, and Gen Z. And so I feel like we've really helped each other. I just think that, this is maybe another topic, but I learned this from Andy Stanley. One of the most powerful statements I've ever heard about leadership is he says, what do you do when you look around the room and you're the most powerful person in the room? What do? You leverage your power for the benefit of others. And I've never forgotten that. When you're the most powerful person in the room, what do? You don't leverage your power against others. You leverage your power for the benefit of others.
Right.
And that's what I have tried to do with our system. I've tried to leverage my power for the benefit of others. And I think it's been helpful. I think it's going to be, if these guys end up being, I hope in the end that if that's what I'm known for, that's great. I'm good with that. That I raised up a dozen leaders and they're out there preaching at a dozen churches. I feel like I'm good with that. I don't have to be known for who I am. I can be known as the guy that maybe helped some younger guys and empowered them. I love that.
Well, and you should. I mean, everybody that I know that's been part of your either leadership cohorts or small groups or been on your staff, that is what they say. That is a huge compliment to you. So question about just the structure of things. Obviously, you have multiple youth pastors on your campuses, multiple worship leaders on your campuses. Do they do the same kind of thing? Do the student pastors all write messages together? Do the worship leaders all do the same songs? Does that all work kind of top down?
So yes and no. The student ministry, they are centralized, and they have basically the same message series on all 4 campuses, and they do the same content. We have a little more autonomy when it comes to worship, because I'm not saying communicators aren't artists. I think they are, but you know this, Rusty. Worship leaders kind of take art to the next level, right? And so I think that we tend to. So we have a pool of worship songs that they have to kind of stay within those bounds, and we usually have one or two actually that are common among all four of the worship sets, and then they get some autonomy with one or two maybe songs right before the message or a closing song. So they're not identical. But I always wrestle with that. Yeah. What do you think about that?
I totally agree. I think they do take artistry to another level, and they like to have some preference in that. But it is nice if a person goes from one campus to another, they know some of the songs. So I think there's probably some benefit to that. Certainly if you're going to reference one of the message or one of the songs in your message. Yeah.
And you know, our guys are great. Right. And so a lot of them, they write their own songs. And so they have stuff like that they do. But I love the live teaching model, but we're getting ready to start a new campus next month in the Allred unit in a federal prison in Wichita Falls, and that'll be a video campus. That'll be our first video campus. So, which is interesting. I thought it would be a live campus, but they want a video campus. I think they feel more a part of our church if they can sort of see themselves at Compass instead of I'm in a prison and somebody's talking to me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So
I heard you recently talk about an initiative you guys did. I don't know how many years ago, but 1,000 tables. I thought this was really interesting. Can you share with our listeners what you guys did?
Well, first of all, it was super fun. I mean, our team got real creative. In every campus, there was when you walk in, the first thing you saw was a dining room table that was all decked out, different people at different campuses put them together so they all look different. But it was such a simple premise. We just simply ask our people, hey, we want to host 1,000 tables over the next couple of months. And we kind of did it a little bit before Thanksgiving and Christmas to give them, because that tends to be a time where you're around the table a little more. Right. I don't know what it is. You tend to be around the table. And so we said, invite the neighbors right around you. Don't invite your community group. You're with them all the time. Don't invite your best friends, and, that'll become a whatever, around here in Texas, right? That everybody's drinking wine and doing all that stuff. We weren't interested in that. What we were interested in is them inviting their next door neighbors, people that maybe they didn't even know, to dinner at their home. And honestly, we didn't even put a big hard sell on inviting them to church. Just get to know them. And I put this diagram on the screen, and I just put the people around you to your right and to your left and across from you. Do you know them? Do you know their kids' names? Do you know anything about them? And then we told them, once you give the invite, take a picture and send it to us. And we would just add the pictures onto the tables at every campus. And then we preached 3 messages about inviting and getting to know the stories of other people and celebrating the wins. And I thought it was an awesome series for us. I loved it. And what's funny is I think we even ended up falling short of our goal. I think we got like 982 tables or something like that, but it didn't matter because that's almost 1,000 families that actually took the time to get to know their neighbor. Right. Because, we live in a busy world. And,
what a great idea. I love that.
Yeah, it was fun.
Do you remember the year or, kind of the dates of that? So our listeners might be able to go back and listen to it.
Man, it was last year.
So 2023, October, November, December.
Yeah, you can go to compass.church and check it out. Yeah, it was so fun.
All right, I want to talk to you 2 last things. And the first one is just directed to people that are leaders in a church. And the second one's directed to all of us. But the first one is, what are your rhythms as a pastor? What's your week look like? And I'm sure it's changed over the years as your church has gotten larger. But think back to maybe even a little bit of how it's developed. I mean, from, you walk off the stage on a Sunday morning, is it just immediately nap, or did you set up a few meetings into Monday all the way through the week? How did you structure things?
Well, it's interesting. It's kind of like when I started at Compass, we had about 800 people, and we had about, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 staff. So it's kind of like we were a golf team.
Oh yeah.
You know, and then a couple of years later, we became like a basketball team. We're like 12, and now we're a football team, right? Yeah. We got coordinators, and I may be the head coach, but I'm not even talking to the kicker, right? Does that make sense? So yeah, I think it has changed. I think when we were running less than 1,000 when I first started, I feel like I was very office-y, definitely had more meetings, more hands-on with staff. I took Thursday off. Now I can't do that. We have Thursday night service. So that's different. When we went multi-site, that's when I felt like I was more, a head coach. And so there were more, it got to be a point where we definitely had to pivot. And that's when we started preaching team, of course. So that affected my day, and my rhythms. And right now, I have a pretty good rhythm now that I feel good about. On Mondays, I work at home. I have a home office. And I know a lot of pastors like to take Monday off. I don't. Right. I don't know what you're. I don't like taking Monday off. It feels like a waste of a day, because yes, sometimes I'm tired, but I'm at my home office. Sometimes, I'm sitting in my pajamas or whatever, sweats, but I'm still working on that talk for next weekend. I'm clearing out any emails that need to be done. I have a pretty solid quiet time. I don't know if that may come up later, but that I'm pretty disciplined about. But I like to get a lot of headway done on my message. Tuesday is if there's a staff meeting, it's going to be on Tuesday. We have them a couple times a month, and then I have an executive meeting that I do. But we have a preaching team from 10 to noon. And then I usually, if I'm going to meet with a staff person, it's going to be on Tuesday. Wednesday is definitely a writing day, but sometimes I'll sprinkle in if there's somebody in the church that I need to meet with, or if I'm going to do like a podcast with an amazing leader, it's going to be on a Wednesday.
Let me know when that happens.
Yeah. And then on Thursdays, I'm ramping up toward that message. I do something. I don't know if leaders do this. I know some do. I do my full sermon on Thursday at 1:30, and we have about 15 staff in there. And I do the whole sermon with slides. And then afterward, we have a quick feedback, for them. And I ask them all, what did you like? If you were going to add anything, what would you add? What would you cut? And then I go into my office and I make edits, and then I'm ready for that Thursday night. Thursday night service for me, has been amazing. Because when I get done with Thursday night, I feel like I have 2 days where I can really rest and relax on Friday and Saturday. I mean, sometimes there's events, right? It happens, but usually I get those 2 days off, and then I'm ready to go on Sunday. But I usually don't look. I don't usually touch the message after Thursday night.
I feel the same way. We did Thursday nights for, I think, the last 8 years out in California. And we just launched them here in Texas. And I love it because you learn so much about the message, about the service. You can make tweaks if needed, but it does feel like, okay, I've got one done. Now, Friday and Saturday, I'm not stressing over how's this going to come across, what do I need to fix, and all that, because it's done. I love it.
It is so great. And our Thursday night service it's not huge, but I've fallen in love with the people that are there. And you've been to it. It's just fun, there's a mix of people there, and I just love it. I love Thursday.
It reminds me sometimes of like the old days when you and I were growing up in church, when you'd have Sunday night church, And you'd go there
Sunday night or Wednesday night.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You just, you saw the same people. It was a little bit, that's usually when the pastor wouldn't wear a tie, those kind of,
Right.
it just felt a little bit more relaxed. It was great.
More casual. Definitely. We serve pizza in the lobby. It's just laid back and it's
we
cool.
do as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
So last question, this pertains to everybody. And you mentioned your quiet time, but sometimes as pastors or any kind of church leader, the Bible can be kind of, the work manual, or when you're in school, it can become the textbook if you're at a Bible college. How have you worked to keep it fresh? Are you a person that you do the same thing every single day for your time with God, or do you kind of mix it up? And what have you noticed works well for you?
Well, I have to mix it up a little bit. I don't think I'm not a big journaler. I don't know why. I just struggle with journaling. You journal?
I go off and on that.
Yeah, and I have done times where I've actually forced myself to journal. Like this summer during my study break, I journaled a little bit through the Psalms. But man, it's so hard for me. I don't know what it is. I guess I write so much that I don't want to write just to be writing. It's like, and I think you're right. Some pastors, like, even when they do their quiet time, they kind of cheat a little bit. like I've been cheating lately because, and here's what I mean by cheating. So we're doing a series right now called God Behind Bars, and it's for the launch of our prison ministry. But it's a 2 Timothy, and Paul was behind bars when he was writing his second letter to Timothy. So we call it God Behind Bars. And so I've been getting up every morning and listening to the whole book of 2 Timothy. It only takes about 18 minutes, and I've just been letting it kind of soak. So I guess that's cheating. But anyway, listen, you discipline around whatever it is that you really love, right? Show me the areas that you're disciplined in. That's something or someone that you love. Right. And but I think that if there's not preparation in the secret place or the quiet times, there'll be failure in the public place. And I think I love to listen to the Word of God. I love to read the Word of God. I don't get super fancy. I listen. I've been listening to the public reading of Scripture. I love the app. I think it's a great app. And I like to read books that keep me in the Word too. Like I'm reading John Mark Comer's Practicing the Way. I'm rereading John Krakauer's book Into Thin Air, not a Bible book, but good leadership book. Good book. And then I'm reading Kyle Adelman's book, When Your Way Isn't Working. But also, we have a front porch with 2 rocking chairs, and I get up pretty early. I get up about 5:30 in the mornings, 5:45. I've always been an early riser. And after I do my listening or reading, I call it the prayer porch, and I go out there and I spend a little time in prayer every morning. And I think that there's people that I'm praying for constantly. I ask God to bless our ministry, and I bring leadership up in my prayers a lot. I think sometimes we should do that more often. How often do you bring leadership up in your prayers? I ask God to help me lead well. And, we're in the midst of you guys, I know I don't want to open up a can of worms, but here in DFW, we've had a lot of church hurt, a lot of pastor failure. And I think you can't spend enough time asking God to take over your ministry and be a part of it and be your mouthpiece. And so I've tried to do that.
Yeah, much like you said, I think it's an overflow. Our ministry is an overflow of what God is pouring into us in those moments. And I think you can definitely tell. You can tell when it's you're operating out of charisma or just routine. And that spiritual time definitely, it keeps it fresh and keeps pouring into you. Drew, this has been fantastic. I always love talking with you. Now we get to do it with the camera and tape rolling. So I don't know. I don't think it's actually a tape anymore, but you know what I mean. So this has been great, buddy. Thank you.
I know I use that word tape sometimes, and my Gen Z tech people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. Tape. Rusty, I'm so excited that you're here in DFW. I couldn't be happier for Crossroads, and And I know that their best days are ahead, and I can't wait to come in December. I know you're coming to Compass, so I'm excited about that.
I'm looking forward to it, buddy. Well, grateful to have you here as well. It was great. It made it easier to move this way, knowing I had a friend. So looking forward to having you out and hearing more from you. So thank you, Drew Sherman.
Yep.
Blessings on you and Compass, even though you didn't like the name the first time you heard it.
I didn't, but I like it now.
Of course. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks. See ya.
Well, Drew, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show. Thank you for leading your church with integrity and with passion over the past 23 years, and look forward to collaborating more in the future together now that I'm a little bit closer, and excited for what's happening there. Hey, next week we'll be back with brand new content. Can't wait for you to be a part of that.